Hello everyone and welcome to this month's free webinar for Quirkos. Today I'll be showing you around our qualitative analysis software, what it looks like the first time you start it up, how you can get going on a project, and we'll also take you through the kind of basic steps of bringing in sources of data and doing some basic analysis. So when you download Quirkos from our website, there's an app to install, and it's absolutely the same for Windows, Mac and Linux. So if you go onto our website, you'll see you can download straight from the front page without any registration the trial for Windows, Mac or Linux. So we click Linux there, sorry, Windows, and then you'll get this install dialog here. Now note that you've got the choice. There's two different versions of the license for Quirkos. So you can have a subscription-based license, which means that you pay a quarterly fee or an annual fee. And that gives you access to the Quirkos software on any number of software or any number of computers, but also the cloud storage option. And that's really interesting because that allows you to store the data anywhere you want. It stores on the cloud, and then any computer you log into, you'll be able to access the data. And it also means that you can share the projects and do live collaboration with other people. And we've covered that in some of the previous webinars. But today we're just going to focus on the basics. You see there's also the option here. So this is for logging into the Quirkos Cloud. There's also the option here for Quirkos Offline. And if you click continue with local storage, then you will just work with files which are stored on your computer. And that's the static license option. And that's a one-off fee that doesn't expire, but it's linked to only one computer. Now you'll see the signing up here. You need to create an account on the website before you can do this. You'll see in the download page it says if you want to use the Quirkos Cloud, you need to create an account at this link, and it takes you to the login page here. So if you don't have an account, you can sign up for one, or you can log in and see all the different aspects of your project, and also the projects that you have which you want to share with other people. So all of that is managed from the project management page. Let's go back to the software and log in. And you'll see you've got a list of all the different projects that you've been working on recently, and projects which has been shared with this account. So I can double click to work on any of those projects again. But I'm going to take you through the process of creating an account for the first time. And to do that, we just click on the New Project button, which is right here on the right. We'll give the project a title, so we'll call this Webinar Example Project. Be as long as you need. You've also got the option to password protect the project. If you do that, it will ask you to put in a password twice. And that means that the project is then end-to-end encrypted. So all of the data in the project, not only in transmission, but also in storage on the data, and when you're using it here, is being encrypted. So it's the maximum kind of level of security if you're working with confidential data. You've also got the structured questions option here, and if you're working with data which comes from something like an online survey platform where you've asked identical questions to other people, then you can use that option. So we're going to leave both of those off for this example. Click on New Project, and here we have a new project, new blank empty project, Webinar Example Project, ready to go. We've just had a new update yesterday, which takes us to version 2.3.1. And that adds a couple of fixes, a couple of improvements, and I'll show you some of those as well. So the first thing we're going to want to do with this project is to bring in some sources of data. Now Quirkos only supports text data. So what you want to do is click at the very top right here, which says click to add source. Then you've got all these different options to bring in sources of text. So if I choose to select a file here, I could choose the only file that's on my computer, and I've got some example projects here. We've got this breakfast project here, and this is examples of people talking about what they eat for breakfast. And you'll see I've got an example here of all of the different types of sources that you can bring in. So we've got a PDF file, we've got a text file, rich text file, and a Word file. Now we can also bring in CSV data, so that's spreadsheet data, so exported from Excel or an online survey platform. And that's really useful if you've got a mixed methods project and you've got discrete and quantitative and qualitative aspects of data as well. So I'm going to click on all of these different sources so that I can bring them all in. Click on the open button. 5 sources have been successfully imported, and you can see here we have the sources of text in the column on the right. Now we can adjust the size of it here, and I can also adjust the size of the text by sitting on settings, general project preferences, and I'll make that a bit bigger so that'll be a bit easier to see on the video stream. Okay, so here's our Simon interview, and let's have a look what he's saying. Well, I always used to have toast for breakfast, but a couple of years ago I was diagnosed as being a gluten or what? Oh no, wheat intolerant. That's right. Okay, so let's start doing some coding of this text before we do anything else. And let's start putting some themes in and some codes of things that might be useful a little bit further down the line. So he says he's talking about toast, so let's create a theme called toast. And the themes and codes in Quirkos are created with this plus button here. This creates a new one. So we'll create one which is called toast. It's pretty self-explanatory, so we don't need a long description. We've got the option here. And we can choose any kind of color for it. So we'll have some kind of brown color, I think. Okay. So there you can see there's a bubble for toast, and it's flashing to show you where it is. And now if I select the text, I can drag and drop that onto the toast bubble like that. And that's how we add data to that code. And then this is kind of about toast as well, so we can add that text to it as well. And now you see it's got a little bigger. So the size of the bubbles in Quirkos is relative to the number of quotes which you have in them. So we've got 2 quotes in this now, so it's kind of twice as big as any others if we had any others. So let's create some others. Actually, this text is about something else. So this is also about gluten intolerance. So we'll click and drag this onto the plus button, and that will immediately create a new quirk with that text already in it. So we'll call this gluten intolerance. Green is fine. And you'll see that it's flashing again, so we know where it is. That shows us exactly where we've got all the pieces of text which are about gluten intolerance. Now, you'll see here there's now 2 highlights next to this text. So we've got toast here and gluten intolerance. If you hover the mouse over the cursor, over those highlight strips, you'll be able to see what that color refers to. You can also right click on that to remove the highlight. So if you wanted to remove that coding from gluten intolerance, you see pop, it's gone and it got a bit smaller. Now there's a full undo redo stack. So you can undo or redo pretty much anything in Quirkos. It also is constantly saving as you go along. So there's no save button, which means that you can just close the software basically and not worry about losing any data. Or if the computer crashes or anything happens, you won't lose any data because it's always saved up to the very last activity that you have. So I'm going to now create one more theme, I think. Call it healthy. Maybe healthy eating. So these titles can be much longer if you need them to. We'll click and drag and move these bubbles around. I guess it's healthier this way. So we'll put that onto the healthy eating theme. So that's how easy Quirkos makes it to add themes, create themes, and then highlight bits of text to them. And now if we double click on any of these bubbles, like the toast one for example, it's now showing us all the different sources of text, which are all of the different quotes which are coming from all of our sources, although we've only looked at one so far, which are about toast. And it also tells us what source they come from and gives us the option here to load more of the source around it so we can quickly view and see what's going on. Okay, now let's go and create a couple of subcategories. So I'm going to show you how you can create kind of nested categories here and subcategories for your codes. And this is very useful when you start to have large numbers of codes or you want to create some kind of structure for your coding framework. So I'm going to create one here which is called bread products. Put that up there for now. I'll create another one called muffins. Another one called bagels. And we can drag and drop these onto each other, and that's how we create subcategories. So we can put muffins as a bread product, we can put bagels as a bread product, and we can put toast on here as well. So now we've got this this top level code, which is bread products, and we can code onto that as well if we want to, but we can also code onto the subcategories by dragging and dropping onto the top level. So when we hover the mouse over, the subcategories pop out, and then we can drag it onto one of the subcategories there. So we've added that to muffins. And now if we double click on the top level category, we can see the subcategories underneath it as well. So again, if we just want to see what we've coded to toast, we can just click on that bubble there, click again, and we'll see everything on all of our different subcategories of bread products and the top level as well. Now if you're wanting to see exactly how that looks, there's a couple of options here. So on the view option, we can turn on the number of codings, and now it's showing us how many codings there are. What that means is there's 1 code in bread product, the top level code, and 4 in all the subcategories underneath it. So now we've gone through, we might go through and code a little more, but for some of these themes, it might actually be useful just to do a quick text search, have a look and see how that's going through the different sources. So if we put bread in here, great, so we've got here already a quote, have to make all our own bread, so it's our own sourdough bread, very fancy. So drag and drop that onto, actually let's drag and drop that onto the plus button and create a new one which is called sourdough. I'll drag and drop that onto the bread products, good. We eat wholemeal bread most of the time, sometimes spoil them with white bread, so okay, well we'll just put that as a bread product for now. But we could start to have subcategories for wholemeal bread and white bread. And we can see whether that's associated with healthy eating and so on. But you can see you can code directly from the search results, and you can also load more of the source around them. So if you want to see the whole sentence or the whole paragraph, you can see it in the context. And this is coming from all of the different sources. So there's from Jane's source, from Mabel and Mubarak and Simon. But actually if we open up the search panel here, we can change this just to search from 1. So that's the currently active search, and that was Simon's, or all of the sources in the project. We can also run the synonyms database here, and this comes up with a lot of synonyms, not just for bread but for money as well, because obviously that's one of the meanings of it. And so you can just choose which one of these you want to include, stuff of life, sugar, and we can search for all of those terms as well if they actually come up across our projects. Okay. So that's the text search. So you get that with that little magnifying glass button here. And I'm also going to show you the memo feature. So with the memos, you can attach a little bit of text to something. So you just select a piece of text as you normally would, but instead of dragging and dropping it onto one of the bubbles, drag and drop it onto the memo column here. And that allows you to do like a little sticky note basically attached to a particular piece of text. So we'll say this person sounds a bit grumpy about this. And now anywhere where we see this quote, so if we see it in the healthy eating option here, we'll also see the attached memo. And so that can be used for our own kind of reflective comments, our own thoughts or observations, and they'll appear anywhere where this quote is attached to this particular piece of work. And if you're doing something like in vivo, line by line coding or IPA, then the memos feature can be used to help you with that. Now, so we've gone through some of the basics of looking at how we work with some of the sources and how we work with some of the codes and the coding. But let's look at some of the another way that we can work with the sources. So at the moment we've brought in lots of sources. They're represented by these tabs along the top. We can only see 3 at a time. But this button here shows a list of all the sources in the project. There's actually not that many, but we can click on them here to load them and to load those sources of text. So we could open Mabel's now. Now there's already that piece of coding which we had in the text, which we did with the text search. But there are also ways which we can give a lot more information about the characteristics, the properties and the attributes of the sources that we have. So for example, if I click on this button here, it's the source properties. Now the source properties, that's a separate tab under this tab. And there's a way for us to assign other bits of data other than the text of the source itself to that source, so to that respondent. So an example of how we might use this would be, if we quickly add a property, we'll probably add one for age. We can say that Mabel is 32. And we can add another property here saying location. We can say that she lives in Edinburgh, which is where Quirkos is based. And now we've created these properties, so a property for age and property for location, what we call a value for those properties. So Edinburgh is a value for location, which is assigned to Mabel's text. So now if we move the tab to Simon, you'll see we've still got these age and location variables here, but we can choose any of the values that we already have, so we can make them also 32 or Edinburgh. We can remove those and add a new one, so maybe 45. And that way we can show a lot more information about our respondents, anything we know. We can also use this for longer comments. But more importantly, what we can do is start to look and see how we would look at subcategories of those data. So we may want to see results just from people who live in a particular location, so results from everyone that lives in Edinburgh, or people over a particular age. And if we describe our properties in this, our sources with these properties, we can do that at any stage in the project. So let's do that right now. What we're going to do is we're going to open an example project, click on project, new or existing, and then I'm going to go to breakfast. So here's my breakfast project. This example project you can download. It uses these example sources. It basically just has a little bit more coding going on in it. So I've created a lot more bubbles in this project. And if we look at the source tab, so we've got properties now for gender, age, and city. And what we can do is we can now filter our results by those properties. So for example, if we click on the query button here, let's get that started. We've got this main query, property gender equals male. So we click on update. Now we're seeing the results just from the men in the project. So we'll click on diet, and this is everything that the men in the project, or actually just Simon in this case. We've got anyone else? Yeah, so Mubarak and Simon, what they're saying about diet. But we can also split this screen in half with the comparison view, and then we can run two queries side by side. So we might want to have gender equals male on the left and gender equals female on the right. And it's then interesting to see, okay, so men are talking about dieting a lot more than women. Women are talking about fruit a lot more than the men. And toast. So the women are talking about toast a lot more than the men. But we can now go back and see these sources of text. And we can actually see not just how many highlights we've got associated with each theme, but whether there's actually some substantial difference into how they're talking about these things. So it's a very important tool to be able to look at the differences between the different types of characteristics of respondents that you have in your project. Now, I'd also like to point out at this stage, so we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the other ways that you can get data out of Quirkos, the different export options. But anywhere where you see a quote, and that includes this view, there are these tick boxes here beside each quote, and you can tick on them and then click on any of the buttons to copy that data. So you can also tick all of them. So we can select all the quotes here which are women talking about toast, click on the copy button, and then if we start Word, we can paste that straight in, and it comes here with the attributes. So this is ready to kind of put in as quotations or format however you want for your writing up your report. And so if you're writing up a report about, and one of the subsections was what women say about toast, then you can very easily get all of those quotes together in one place. So I don't need to save that. Let's click on the home button here. That'll always take you back to this view and look at some of the other export options. So if I click on export here, you can see I can create a report here. I'll show you that very quickly. That's a kind of standard report which gives you all the information about the different things which are happening in the project. So for example, we've got here who generated the report, summary of the sources, how long they are in characters, how many quotes we've attached to them. We've got summary of the codes, if they've got a parent category or grandparent, who created them in the project. So you can see the work done by different authors here. And also then we've got graphs of the participants. We can see they're 50% male and 50% female here. We've also got these canvas views. And any of these pictures and actions you can actually just drag or drop into Word or right click and save the image. But you can also tick to customize these different things. So we can turn off the canvas view, we can turn off that property summary. And here now we've got the actual text. So the text of everything people said about healthy eating. And when we're happy with customizing the way that looks and the amount of detail we have in it, we can save it as a Word file, as a HTML, so as a web page which other people can interact with, or as a PDF file. And that lets us share our report and show our coding and our working out to other people. Now we've also got word clouds, so you can generate these very easily for, by default, all the sources in the project. But you'll see at the top here there's a little tick box for the sources, so you can untick them. Maybe you just want to see these are the words that Sarah is using in the project. Compare that with Simon. Okay, so children was an important theme for Sarah but not for Simon. And then again, there's lots of options to kind of customize this in fun different ways, change the size of the words, and so on and so forth. So you can have a lot of fun playing around with this. There's also spreadsheet export, and this allows you to put the data into Excel. Create import CSV exporting. Oh, should be CSV anyway, it doesn't matter. And that basically creates all of your coded data back out as files that you can bring into Excel. So for example, here you'll see we can look at all the memos that we have in the project. There's just that one. And we can see the things we've got from the chat, which I'll show you in the middle. We've also got here the quotes. It's probably the most useful one, and that's got kind of all of the quotes. Here they are, who they came from, how old they were, who coded it, and what their source was. So you can use this to do more kind of statistical analysis. You can also use filters and pivot tables to explore the data in different ways that you can't do within the software. And also you can export and share with other people. Now, if you want to bring in the data to other qualitative software packages, or if you're wanting to bring in a project from another qualitative software package into Quirkos, you can do that with the RefiQDA export. So this is a standard file format that allows you to bring in data across all of the major qualitative software packages. It's supported by all of them now. And actually what you can do here is if you go to Project, Upload Local File, you can choose here the Refi format, and then you'll see we've got a bunch of QDP exports that we're using for testing, and then we can import the data in that way. So whatever software you're coming from, you can very quickly get to that in Quirkos. So I'm just going to go back to our project here, show you we've also got this Word document export here, and this basically brings out your coded transcripts back as a standard Word file, which is the comments feature on the right here, if you've got the markup enabled, to show you these kind of color-coded highlights and exactly how you've coded the text. So it's really nice to be able to print this out, take it away from the computer, show it to someone else, a supervisor or a colleague who wants to have a look and see how you've been doing the coding interpretation. And anything that will open a Word file, they can show that. Or of course you can print it out from here as well. That's basically all of the different things that I was going to show you for that. One of the other features that's quite new to Quirkos 2.3 is the chat feature here. You see I've put some silly chats to myself, but you can chat with other people as well if you're collaborating on the project. But you can also use this for your journal, your reflexive note, and you can just type in here and you get a date and time stamp of when you've been typing. So it's a very useful way to be able to keep track of your coding process as you're going through. And a lot of people suggest that you have this kind of reflexive coding diary when you're working through your data. So that's pretty much everything that I was going to show in this kind of basic introduction here. There's not a lot more to it. Quirkos is designed to be very simple, very quick to use, very quick to teach. So we designed it to teach, as we've just done now, in about 20 minutes or half an hour, so you can focus on working with the data and installing, not installing software and learning how to use it, but doing actually the qualitative analysis. We know what it's like when you've got exciting data that you want to play with and explore, and Quirkos gives you a really fun way to get coding and exploring and working with that data. So I'm just going to have a quick check and see if anybody has any questions. Please feel free to put them in here. So someone asked about the cloud storage meeting GDPR regulations. Yes, it does. So our cloud storage system we've got a GDPR compliance statement on the website and a lot more information. But basically, yes, we meet all the GDPR requirements. We also meet the requirements for the US-EU data transfer regulations if you're working with data stored there. All our data is securely stored in UK-based servers, and so they comply with all the UK, EU, and the US data protection, security, and storage requirements. Our cloud storage projects are also encrypted, so even we don't have access to them. So basically, we can see that you have a project on the data. We see that you have a project there, but we can't get access to your data in any way. So it's a very secure way, and we've designed this with the understanding that a lot of people do a lot of very confidential qualitative data, and to make sure that we meet the criteria for organisations like the NHS, who are storing confidential medical data, but also those who are needing to meet the requirements of ethics boards and other IRBs and all of those different procedures and hoops that you might need to jump through. The other thing to say about that is if and you will find some organizations will not let you store any data on the cloud. We maintain that offline version for that reason. So if we sign out here and we continue with the local storage, now what that's doing is actually now we're saving files only on the local computer, and this won't actually let you save into a network or shared location. So if you've got data which you absolutely must keep on one secure computer, then the offline version of Quirkos will allow you to do that. And it's absolutely the same software, absolutely the same features, and you can upload to and from the cloud or download if those needs change to at any time. So it's a very good question, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, that sounds great. Thanks very much for coming along today. Do remember to go along to the website where you can download the free trial. And there's also a lot more information here and a lot more tutorials as well. So if you go to the Learn Quirkos page, we've got 5-minute videos, 20-minute videos, and a much more detailed 1-hour walkthrough. This one is also quite useful because if you go to the YouTube page here, it's also got kind of minute-by-minute breakdown. So if you want to see a very specific thing, so for example, you wanted to see how do I merge quirks together? Well, you can just click on that there, and rather than watch the whole video, you'll see a demonstration
the text that I coded in
exactly
here.
how to use the merge quirk function
sentence here, which is about porridge. I don't
there.
want to lose it. So what I'm going to do is
everything I was going to cover
merge
today.
this into the serial category.
Thanks for tuning
Don't
in.
need the detail
this is
of
now
having a
available
separate
to
code for
download
porridge,
if you're watching it
every
live
instance
or
of
watch
porridge,
directly from
but I can put this into the
stream
serial
from
category
YouTube
by
at any
right-clicking
time.
on the bubble.
But always get in contact
Now
with
this
us
gives me a
if you
lot of
have any
different
questions.
of different things that I can do
Because of COVID-19 restrictions, we're not allowed to be going and answering the phone at the moment, I'm afraid. But do send us an email. You can chat to us through Skype or Twitter or Facebook
if I choose
or
mirror,
LinkedIn.
it's going to choose
and we'd be happy
anyway.
to call you back and discuss any questions that you
Which
had.
source do you want
And we're also
which
happy to
quirk
set
do you
up
want to merge
these
this into? I'm going to
live
merge
webinars,
everything that I've
even
coded
in
into
a bit more
porridge
detail
into the serial
if
bubble.
you need it. So
Just
do
like
get in
that.
contact
Okay,
with
right.
us.
So now
all
serial,
our support and
that's got my
available free without any
there
registration.
about porridge.
So
that
we are
again
here
helps you in
to
the
help
future
with any questions that you might
manage all
have.
of your codes, especially if you
So thanks for coming on again today.
I
As
hope
always, the
Quirkos will
undo
be
button and
helpful and
useful
if
for
change
you.
your mind.
And best luck with your
Let's look at some of
qualitative
those other
research.
options of the different things that you can do with the codes by right-clicking on them. The first option is the overview. Now that's